local governments and nonprofits try a new approach to finding jobs for those without housing. Plus, a deputy VA secretary visits Tucson and talks about fabricated wait times at the local facility. What does the latest Jaguar sighting in southern Arizona tell us about the endangered animal? And we talked to a longtime public official who retires this week from managing the county streets, sewer, and flood systems. Then, remembering Lalo Guerrero, the father of Chicano music. This is Metro Week. Hi, I'm Andrea Kelly. Thanks for joining us. An effort to help find work for those in our community who don't have housing got underway this month. It's a pilot program, and we'll visit the job site after a look at the week's top stories from the Arizona Public Media Newsroom.
2 Tucson area school districts are being honored for increasing enrollment in advanced placement courses. The Tucson Unified School District and the Vale School District were among 4 in the state honored by the College Board. A Tucson group is pushing a ballot proposal that would raise the city sales tax for preschool education. A group calling itself Strong Start Tucson wants to raise the city sales tax by a half penny to send more children to preschool. The group needs more than 9,000 signatures to get on next November's City of Tucson ballot. Pima Community College is offering a free class to help people pass a new civics test. The test is required for a high school diploma or a GED in Arizona. A state law requires anyone graduating in 2017 to pass a civics test with a score of at least 60% before earning that diploma. Pima College will offer a class in its adult basic education curriculum designed specifically for the civics test. The multiple choice test is based on U.S. immigration and naturalization exam. U.S. and Mexican officials launched a new program to streamline transportation at the Arizona-Mexico border. Last summer, the United States and Mexico experimented with a program to inspect northbound cargo trucks together at the Mariposa port of entry. That cut down wait times to about 30 minutes. Now the two countries are introducing the same program to southbound cargo trucks. For more on all of the week's news, visit our website.
Losing a job or being out of work is a big reason people lose their homes. The city of Tucson has launched a program to hire homeless people for temporary jobs cleaning streets. Vanessa Barchfield brings us the story.
The Tucson Homeless Work Program begins here in the parking lot of the Salvation Army's Hospitality House. It's just after 8 a.m. About 24 people volunteered for today's crew, and these 6 were selected at random. Before they head out, they get bright vests, hard hats, gloves, and safety goggles. And then they're off to a neighborhood close by. What does the work entail?
Pulling weeds and trying to get the trash out of the roundabouts and get them cleaned up.
That's Larry, who asked us not to use his last name or show his face. This is his second day working in the program. He says he threw his name in the hat because he wants to earn some extra money while he's looking for full-time work.
I usually work as a scorer. I work for the Pearson Corporation, which does scoring for school districts. Unfortunately, they weren't able to work here in Tucson this year because they lost their space where they usually were doing the scoring work. And so that took a big chunk out of my income. Usually I'm self-sufficient. However, this year I wasn't able to be.
Larry and the others will get paid $45 in cash for today's work. Another crew member named Alan says that's the reason he's here today.
Oh, just to earn a little extra cash for the holidays if I can.
Deanna Barber works with Catholic Community Services, one of the organizations that's teamed up on this project. She spends the day with the crew and helps them navigate the complex network of social services available to homeless people to get them the assistance they need.
I've had them asking questions about employment and housing. It's all a matter of when they're ready to take that step and get that help. And that's what I'm here for, is you're out here working the program, you want the help, I'll help you.
The crew will be out here for about 5 hours. They'll get lunch and have a bed and a shelter reserved for them tonight. So would Alan volunteer for the Tucson Work Program again?
Oh, sure. Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, I'm kind of enjoying myself out here. Getting a little sunshine and a little bit of work in it.
The average person does want to work. They want to make money. They want to have self-sufficient if at all possible. And so anything that furthers that goal, or takes them towards that goal, is something that they welcome.
Vanessa Barchfield continues our story on the Tucson Homeless Work Program. She sat down with Tom Litwicki, the CEO of Old Pueblo Community Services, to ask where the idea for the program came from.
Well, the idea originated out of Albuquerque, and Albuquerque had started a program called A Better Way that their mayor had promoted, and it was to reduce panhandling. Richard Fimbres from Ward 5, councilman, looked at this as a model for Tucson, brought it back to Tucson, and we're using it as a combination of reducing panhandling and with the stated goal of getting people into permanent housing and out of shelter care.
And we're in obviously the very early stages of the program right now, but how has it gone so far?
So far it's gone wonderfully. They have been working on traffic circles in some of the neighborhoods around town, and from the reports I've received, neighbors have come out to thank them for cleaning the area up. They pulled out about 11 trash bags that are about 35 pounds each yesterday in a 5-hour period. And they had no incidents. It was a really smooth operation. So you never know, first day you kind of cross your fingers.
And of course, there are only slots for 6 people right now. Do you see an opportunity to expand that, to invite more people into the program?
Yes, we've received considerable support from the business community and from the city and from the county. And based on that, we hope to expand next year to 4 days a week. And we may be able to expand to more than 6 people at a time. The van right now, we have a 15-passenger van, but we weren't certain how much property people would have because they have nowhere to store their things when they're in shelter, so they'll be bringing their things with them. So depending on the space in the van, we may be able to go up to 8 without a problem. The other thing that is personally, I think, important is that we, in our next phase, start offering it to people who are on the streets and not just in shelter. What we have to work out is how do we screen people appropriately so that we're not putting someone in a situation of working that's not able to do the work. So it was a little bit safer and easier for us to start with the shelters, but it's our goal to then take those other 2 days and go to people who are right down the street. So you can see that kind of impact right in the street population.
You mentioned, of course, the sort of physicality of the work. Is there any option for people that maybe have physical limitations but really do want to work?
Currently, there isn't. Folks have to be able to do light landscaping type work. It's not very heavy work, but they have to be mobile and able to do light landscaping. One of the areas of interest, of course, has been to work with folks who have disabilities, physical disabilities, because physical disabilities is a really large, is actually growing. It's one of the areas growing within shelter care. Nationally, that went from about 40% to 45% in the last few years. So we don't have anything right now, but I would say it's definitely on the horizon to try and find other work. The other trick with that kind of work is that we want to make sure we're not displacing current work and labor in the community. We don't want to create jobs that take away other jobs. So we need to be sensitive to the fact that we're really creating new jobs.
So right now, this sort of cleaning and maintenance is just not happening.
Correct. It's just not happening on a regular basis. And if you go through town and see some of the traffic circles, you can see they're kind of overdue. Mm-hmm. So the city didn't have the funding for it and the ability to do it. And this is a way to really stretch that out, whereas it would have cost them a lot more to try and contract or do it themselves over that year.
I believe that there is a limit on the number of days people can participate in the program. Will that reduce its sort of long-term effectiveness in the community? You
know, we're not sure at this point in time. What we're doing right now is there is a limit, and it's a limit based on earnings. So if somebody, as a contract, casual labor, earns over a certain amount, then there's paperwork that they'd have to do. With the difficulty of people having ID and such as that, we don't want to go over that limit to make things harder for them. So we've got, up about 12 times we can work with someone. What we're going to learn now, I think, is it better to spread out this across folks in shelter so that more people get the opportunity, or should we work with a smaller number of folks more aggressively? and more often. And we're collecting information. One of what Old Pueblo's donating to this project is the management and the evaluation. So we're going to be evaluating over the next 3 months if there's any correlation between the number of times someone works and them actually getting into either longer term employment or permanent housing. And then we'll adjust that as we go through the year. Albuquerque really didn't have that information. Their project was really based on reducing panhandling through the work. So they didn't really track the movement to permanent housing or to longer term employment. So this is going to be kind of new information that we should be able to adjust our work and our interactions based on that. And right now I just don't really know.
Okay. And what's next for the program?
What's next is what you were speaking about earlier, which is this idea of expanding and getting more days and reaching more people, and then being able to reach a more diverse population, and especially those who are on the streets. One of our challenges is going to be helping people who have pets, because what do they do with their pets when they're with us? So looking at maybe temporary pet adoptions. There's some programs that do that so that people can have someone helping them with their pet as they get into permanent housing and then they get their pet back, or day locations in which there are kennels and places they can put their pets. Some of the biggest barriers right now to folks getting into shelter and then from there getting into permanent housing has been pets, has been that they're still using alcohol or drugs, or that they're with a partner that they don't want to separate from in that process. So I think those are our challenges in the areas that we'll have to work and bridge through. The homelessness has definitely decreased nationally. The one area that hasn't decreased, and it's kind of increased a little bit in the last couple of years, has been street homeless. And we've seen that nationally, and we've seen that in Tucson. So the real next phase for us is to really make an impact on those folks who are on the streets in downtown and in the washes and other areas.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You can find the full conversation with Tom Litwicki on our website. Turning to national attention on Tucson, this week the Deputy Secretary for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs came to the VA hospital in Tucson. Christopher Conover joins us for more. Why did Sloan Gibson come here?
He came here for a number of reasons. He's touring a lot of the VA hospitals across the country because, of course, there are a lot of problems, as we've heard about for the last few years. Tucson in particular, our hospital is the subject of an Inspector General's report that said wait times were being manipulated so they looked good on paper when in reality that isn't what was happening. Deputy Secretary Gibson was very firm. He said that will not be tolerated.
I've instructed the Office of Accountability Review to investigate. I know they were already doing their AIB on some aspects of what's been reported. We'll look at all of that stuff. Where there's misconduct, we'll hold people accountable.
Deputy Secretary Gibson said part of the fix for this is an additional investigation that is ongoing and new face-to-face training for all VA hospitals on a new scheduling system. The hospital in Phoenix will get that first training.
Looking even further into the future, is that going to be enough? Is that all they're looking at?
I think it's a start, and the Deputy Secretary actually had a lot of good things to say about what is going on here at the Southern Arizona VA.
One of the biggest challenges we've got is access. Access has improved here in Tucson over the last year or two, meaningfully improved. More care being delivered, more timely access to care, more channels for care, better integrated care, but we've still got some challenges.
One of the things the Deputy Secretary said is needed at our facility here in Southern Arizona is a permanent medical director. They're working on that right now, and he said he's going to check in either via phone or personally every 2 weeks with the local VA until that person is hired.
Thank you so much for that report. Turning now, a wildlife camera on the Fort Huachuca Army Post captured an image of a jaguar this month. I asked Melanie Culver to join me in the studio earlier this week to provide some context about the image. She has a federal permit to operate remote cameras in southern Arizona for research into jaguar habitat at the University of Arizona. I asked her this week what the photo means.
We have a new jaguar that entered Arizona in, say, the last couple weeks, and the jaguar is a young male, say 2 years, give or take a number of months old. We know it's a new Jaguar because we compared its rosette pattern with our photos of the Jaguar that has been in the Santa Ritas between 2011 to 2015. We also are collaborating with a project in Sonora that's being undertaken by Primero Conservation, which is another photo project, and that is the closest breeding population. And the population they're studying is also the same population that's being studied by the Northern Jaguar Project. And that population has photos, and we can compare the rosette patterns also with those photos. And we could try to infer if that individual has ever been documented. But
in
right
Mexico.
now, right, in Mexico. But right now we know this is a new individual for Arizona.
What's the slate of things you could find out from this Jaguar, or things you might be looking into next, aside from how much time or whether it spends time in Mexico?
So over the last 20 years, we've had 6 individuals come across the border in this area. And that's an average of 1 individual every 3.3 years. So that's really pretty exciting. And it's this continual movement of animals, all males, but male individuals into this area. Because we have such a network of cameras in Arizona, I think that's why we're able to document how long they stay. In New Mexico, we don't have that information. They're documented once and then not beyond. So what we'll be looking for is, does it stay? Our study has had continual monitoring. So we had 16 mountain ranges from 2011 to 2015. Then we dropped down to 4 mountain ranges. Now we're back up to about half of those original mountain ranges with this group of incredible citizen scientists, about 21 of them now and growing. At that same time, though, when we ended the original study, the Fort Huachuca took over the cameras we had on the fort, and they added their own cameras, and that's the group of cameras that this photo came from. But we also have cameras in the Huachuca Mountains. So we'll be watching to see if he stays in the Huachucas or goes to a nearby mountain range, and we have several nearby mountain ranges covered with cameras. So hopefully if he goes to a different mountain range, we'll also be able to detect that.
What does it tell you that there could be 2 males in proximity to each other? And I guess that's maybe one of the unanswered questions, is whether the one we've known for a few years as El Jefe, is he still here? Do you know the answer?
Right. We don't. We last detected him on September 29th, and that's absolutely the last detection of him on one of our cameras, September 29th of 2015.
Oh, 15, okay.
15, yes. So 15 months ago. And he could have moved far off, far away, that he's not in any of the roughly 8 mountain ranges that we're monitoring, or gone back to Mexico. There's also a possibility that he's no longer alive. I mean, beyond those 3 possibilities, I can't think of any other possibility. So as far as 2 males being around at the same time, in 1996, there were 2. One was in New Mexico, one was in Arizona. Also, in 2004, there were 2 individuals. They were the 2 that have been since called Macho A and Macho B. And they existed together for, I think, a few months. And then Macho A wasn't seen any longer, and Macho B is the one that had existed here for 13 years, which came to be known as the oldest known jaguar in the wild. No other jaguar is documented to be as old as him, considering he was an adult already before we documented him. So he was close to 16 years old. Those are the 2 instances. So if the jaguar from the Santa Ritas is still around, this could be a 3rd time that there are 2 existing. But we don't know that, because being that he's not been seen for 15 months, we can't say that there are 2 right now.
Tell me about your contract or your work, how it translates to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. You're operating the cameras on a contract?
Not any longer. So our contract was from 2011 to 2015, and at that point it went to a strictly volunteer basis. And that's where the 21 citizen scientists, who are really doing a fabulous job, and they have such enthusiasm for this project, and they are conducting it with such great expertise. But the contract ended, but our permits have not. So we still have the permits to conduct this work. And because we're operating on permits to work in the forest, we still are obligated, and we would, even if we weren't obligated, to report every sighting of an endangered species. And the fort likewise. So that's why this detection immediately came to the attention of Fish and Wildlife Service.
All right, Melanie Culver, thanks so much for coming in and sharing what you know so far.
Thank you for inviting me.
The talk of infrastructure needs locally and nationally leads one to ponder the state of Pima County's infrastructure. Who better to ask than the man who's overseen road maintenance, the sewer system, and flood control network for the last 16 years, right up to his retirement this week.
Before coming to work for Pima County, John Bernal was a commissioner with the International Boundary and Water Commission in El Paso and an engineer with the Federal Highway Administration. In private practice, he was a land development consultant. That means he's been working in infrastructure, streets, sewers, water systems for his 47-year career. He's been closely affiliated with County Administrator Chuck Huckleberry, who also started his career in engineering and public works. Mr. Bernal joined me in the studio to reflect on his work and to assess how those areas of county government are faring as he prepares to leave.
In Pima County and this region, it's no different than it is practically anywhere in the country. The old adage of aging infrastructure is what we've been dealing with. And so we have continuing needs for more resources to fix our roads, our bridges, our sewer and water systems, et cetera. I wouldn't consider it a dire condition necessarily, perhaps except for roadways, but we have a crying need for more resources to invest in our infrastructure and public works.
If you had a magic wand and you could wave it over and solve the transportation funding problem that is not just here but nationwide, where would you start? What would you do to change, to fix the funding problem?
I would address it both at the federal level, where the gas tax hasn't been adjusted in over 20 years, and at the state level here in Arizona, where it hasn't been adjusted for over 25 years. So I think the bet that we missed many, many years ago is that we didn't index our gas tax to inflation or some factor. We would have kept up with things a lot better. Maybe not have solved it all, but that's what I would do. I would definitely adjust the transportation revenue somehow.
So that's your magic wand solution. What is the most realistic solution that we should look for?
I think the most realistic solution in Arizona and for Pima County and Tucson is for us to do something here locally. We have a regional transportation authority that has imposed a tax since 2006. It's been used largely for upgrading roadways and building new facilities. I think if we can make those dollars and add to those, probably another half cent, add to those and make it available for pavement preservation, operation maintenance, I think we'll go a long ways towards addressing our needs for road improvements.
When we looked back at your career, we looked at a lot of photos of groundbreakings, the big events that unveil a new project. What's your favorite one?
The favorite one of a groundbreaking sense is not in Pima County. It was in San Diego when I was with the International Boundary and Water Commission. My first day on the job, believe it or not, and I got to introduce Vice President Al Gore to an international wastewater treatment facility. South Bay International is what it's called. And that was back in July of 1994. Here locally, I can tell you that my most favorite one was the one that we did along the Gulf Links Alvernon corridor, because we had quite the level of political representation from Senator Barry Goldwater, Senator DeConcini, Congressman Mo Udall. Those are all icons in the political world, and they were all there, and I was there. So it was really a lot of fun.
What do you think was your biggest success in your career?
Here locally, I have to say that the investment we made in our wastewater treatment facilities was a crowning achievement. We had not touched those facilities in 30 years, 35 years, and we were able to develop a program with the help of some very seasoned experts in that area to upgrade our two regional wastewater treatment facilities. Those will now serve the needs of this community for a couple of decades at least. So I think that was one of my major accomplishments. But back in the 80s, when we installed the major north-south corridors around Davis-Monthan Air Force Base and through Cove Road, and those were, I think, very significant and important. And then more recently, we did a lot of work up in the Northwest and in the road area and the transportation area. So all of those, I think, I'm particularly proud of.
On the wastewater treatment plant, the county's looking at raising sewer rates at this point, right? Tell me why that is.
We have not had any rate increases in 4 years, and so even though our investment in capital infrastructure is complete for the most part, we continue to invest in our sewer lines and collection facilities, what we call conveyance facilities. But it's a massive operation in wastewater. It's the biggest department I have. The regulations are tough and get tougher every year, and so to meet all those water quality standards, you have to continue to invest in the treatment facilities. You have to continue to explore new and improved opportunities for cutting costs. But we need the rate increase to keep us up to date with all that technology and advancement.
John Bernal, thanks so much for coming in and looking back on your career with me.
Thank you so much, Andrea.
Christmas Eve is the 100th birthday of musician and Tucson native Lalo Guerrero, known as the father of Chicano music. In 1997, President Bill Clinton presented the troubadour with the National Medal of Arts, and he was the first Latino to receive the nation's highest arts award. He was born in 1916 on South Meyer Street in Barrio Viejo, just south of downtown. Lalo died in 2005 at the age of 88. Nancy Montoya spent many years covering him and his music, always with a camera in hand, and put together this look at him and one of the most famous songs, Barrio Viejo.
There was always music in this house. It was the happiest house in the whole neighborhood.
Viejo barrio, barrio viejo. Solo hay lugares.
I think it's become the most popular song that I've ever written.
Donde un día hubo casas, donde vivió nuestra raza.
Because at that time, we were at a very low ebb, the Mexican-American community here in Tucson. And we needed something to be proud of, something that would give us pride. And that's what made me, that was the main point that I was trying to make.
Afuera tomar el fresco.
Something uplifting that would give our people some pride and self-respect and have a good self-image.
¿Cómo está, doña Juanita? Buenas tardes, Isabel.
I'm very proud and it's a great satisfaction, but at the same time, it's a certain amount of, believe it or not, humility, because I knew poverty. I struggled a lot. So I wrote this song to show you how much I love it. You can brag about LA and the city by the bay. You can sing about New York, but I thank that crazy stork that ignored all of those towns and flew on and on and on till she dropped me in Tucson. Tucson, where the air could not be cleaner and the mighty Catalinas are so blue. I don't know how I did it, how I got where I am. I just got there. It seemed like somebody was showing me the way or something. That's the way I feel. It may sound like so much corn, but I'm so proud that I was born in old Tucson.
That's it for us. We're featuring special programming for the next 2 weeks, and we'll see you again in January. Thanks for watching.